matter how loud, how kind, respectful, how cute, men will still fucking hate you.
We're talking about bringing that 4B movement right here to the United States. Talking about the fucking Operation 4B. Refuse to date men, get married, have sex with them, or children.
All I have to say is good luck getting laid. Me and my girlies are participating in the 4B movement.
No more kitty cat for moderate men. But being all the things that the patriarchy wants us to be. Clearly, they don't give a shit about us.
No attention to men. Delete block. Do not respond to them.
Government cares that they're not having kids because children are the future labor force.
I'm gonna start barking and getting fucking crazy.
Think I'm crazy? Just like all the women before me who are crazy.
It is the best thing I've ever done for my mental health. We're not crazy. We have to do this together.
The women who are doing the 4B movement help other women who are doing the 4B movement.
Alright, feel me out. I'm not be responding to you. I'm going to be promoting the 4B movement.
Do not acknowledge them. Do not look at them. Do not laugh at their jokes.
Hey, y'all. How are you doing? I'm great. Thank you so much for asking. It's me, Kim, and I'm back for another video. That was our little intro teaser to what the girls are talking about regarding the 4B movement. After the election, and that man was chosen to be the 47th president of the United States, women, and who knows how many women, but enough women to go viral, have decided to join the 4B movement. Today we're going to talk about it, whether it's feasible, my personal thoughts and feelings about it. But before we get into that, first things first, I'm the realist. Am I allowed to say that? That's an Iggy Azalea lyric. She's canceled, right? We don't. Okay, anyways. This is merch. I always forget because I'm short. Oh, that's why I put that up there, because I'm short and you can't see. My abortion is healthcare. Abortion is healthcare. Available at shopknuff.com. Also, Misandry Isn't Real, available at shopknuff.com, along with all of the other super cute merch currently working on. Don't blame me, blame the patriarchy. That's going to be a cute one. Thank you to everybody who has purchased merch. I believe the last purchase was from Aisha, and Aisha was from the UK because it was in British pounds. So shout out to you, Aisha, from the UK, because it had to do that converter. Or was it in euro? It was in pounds. Okay, yeah. Next. I have mentioned earlier that For Harriet started as a blog, and I ran it for years and years, and we published dozens, maybe over 100 different, maybe two, I don't know, hundreds of writers, dozens and dozens of different writers for years and years and years, hundreds for sure of posts and articles and essays and poetry and short stories for years. And after people stopped going to blogs, I stopped publishing the written work and started to transition the strategy to make videos. But people are reading again because people are tired of algorithms. And this is a great time. It's a great day. So For Harriet, as a written publication that features a wide array of people, not me, is going to relaunch at the beginning of next year. I have to check my phone because sometimes, when I used to have those audio issues and I would be muted and nobody would tell me, but then people would be texting me. And so whenever my phone buzzes when I'm live, I get nervous. Relaunching next year. If you're interested in writing an essay, an op-ed, a short story, hit me up. Everything that we publish will be paid. You can sign up for the email newsletter at forharriet.com. If you want to go through the archive of For Harriet, that is available at archive.forharriet.com. All of those links, including the merch link, is down below. Next, what did Flo Kennedy say? She said, "Don't agonize, organize." So The wheels in my head have been spinning. I have decided I'm going to throw a holiday party / fundraiser on December 7th in Dallas. It's called the I'm Dreaming of a Black and White Christmas. The dress code is black and or white, semi-formal. This is going to benefit the family place. Let's learn a little bit more about the family place.
Hi, I'm Jaden, and this is my puppy Max. Say hi, Max. Max and I are best friends. We go on bike rides, play catch, and maybe someday he'll even go fishing with me and my dad, because things are better now. You see, there was a time my mom and dad didn't get along. Dad would get mad, and there was a lot of yelling. One time, Mom was so scared we had to leave our house. Dad said he was sorry, and we went back home. And then that's when the hitting started. Mom and Dad had a hard time when they were growing up. In both of their families, there was a lot of yelling and hitting too. So they didn't know any different when it came to our family. Things got better, but then they got worse, and one night Mom called the police. They told us about the family place. When we got there, I was scared. I was sleeping in a new bed, and Mom said that I might not go to my own school anymore because she was trying to keep me safe. But then I met my counselor Cindy at the family place, and she told me,
Hi, Jaden. Welcome to the family place. We're glad you're here. Let me tell you a little about us. The Family Place is North Texas's largest family violence agency, and we empower men, women, and children to escape family violence and break the cycle of abuse. Whether the abuse is physical, emotional, verbal, or financial, we provide a safe place to heal and the resources needed to start down the path to independence. The Family Place provides crisis counseling services for adults and children like emergency shelter, medical and dental care, early childhood education, job, technical, and life skills training for adults, and so much more.
Tell them about Max, Cindy.
Oh yeah, we also have a kennel for dogs and cats, like Max.
Pretty cool, huh? Now Mom is working again, and we have a new home where Mom, Max, and I all feel safe. Dad's getting help and learning new things too. Speaking of learning, you want to learn some new tricks, Max?
All right. The Family Place is the oldest and largest family violence crisis center in North Texas. I have heard that they do amazing work. A Black person told me about them, so don't worry. It does benefit Black people. A Black woman told me about them, so don't worry. I'm just saying, look, I'm just saying, because right now I want all of the Trump voters to suffer, okay? So the proceeds from the I'm Dreaming of a Black and White Christmas holiday fundraiser are going to go to the Family Place. For the holidays, they have an adoptive family program. I'm sure that you've heard of these kinds of things, kind of like angel trees, where people who work with the center say what they want and what their kids want, and you buy the things on their list and wrap them and make them gifts. All of the proceeds are going to go to adopting families and even adopting individual women, buying the things that they want and giving that stuff to them for Christmas. We are going to drop off all of the gifts that we purchase the week of December 2nd. The more tickets that we sell, the more people we come, the more families and individuals who've been harmed by family violence we can help. And I'm excited. It's going to be a fun time. I had a Christmas party in 2022. I did not have one last year, but 2022 was really popping. Incidentally, the day after is when I really started getting serious with my boyfriend. So I really remember that. And it's going to be great. I love to dress up. I love to see y'all and hang out. I like to help people. And we're going to come together and meet and hang out and talk shit about the Trump supporters and feel good because we're eating, we're going to hang out, we're going to drink, and we're going to help people. The thing about feminism and the feminist activism that emerged around 50 years ago is, unfortunately, there's this mistaken belief that it's about who to date, who not to date, or whatever, but foundationally, feminism is about saving women's lives. And I think a lot of us, because we have experienced an explosion, or it feels like a rapid expansion of rights and access, that we forget that the original ideas was to create institutions that could save women's lives, that could change society, that could agitate and organize for political change, yes, but we can create our own things and help each other. And I think in the next few years, we're going to have to be really intentional about helping each other. And as a, I guess, privileged person and a person with a platform, I think I have a responsibility to facilitate that. For sure. I'm not mad again. I'm not mad about the election. I'm not. It is what it is. The people chose who they chose. Now we gotta collect our shit and figure it out. I do hope that the Trump voters suffer. All of them. The Black ones, the Asian ones, the Latino ones, the white ones. And you will. The great thing is you will. So, all right. Next. Let's move on. Here we go.
After the election, a call for women to swear off men. Interest in South Korea's 4B feminist movement, which rejects dating, marriage, sex, and childbirth, has risen in the United States. By Gina Cheralus, November 8, 2024. Following the results of Tuesday's election, Jada Mevs, a 25-year-old living in Washington, D.C., is encouraging women to take action by signing up for a self-defense class, deleting dating apps, getting on birth control, and investing in a vibrator, as a response to Donald J. Trump's election as president for a second time, and the failure of 3 referendums that would have protected abortion rights in Florida, Nebraska, and South Dakota. Ms. Mevs and others are calling on women to join 4B. It's a radical feminist movement that started in South Korea and encourages the rejection of heterosexual dating, marriage, and sex, as well as childbirth. While it is too soon to know how popular such a stance could become in the United States, there are already women online who are adopting such ideas in a defiant display of self-protection. If we can't control what they do in terms of legislation and abortion rights, we have to do something for ourselves, Ms. Mev said. Starting with cutting out the male influence in our life and making sure we're taking the safety precautions as well, visiting OBGYNs and making sure we are best prepared for when January comes and the years after that. Ms. Mevs, who posted a video on TikTok explaining why she believes women should adopt this mindset, had already begun decentering men in her own life around 2 years ago as a way of turning her attention back onto herself. Now, she said, her reasons have expanded to protecting her safety and health. What really drew me to participating in this movement was taking my body and my best interest into my hands, she said. The original 4B, or 4 No's movement, started to gain momentum in 2019, during a time when women in South Korea were undergoing a reckoning over the long-standing gender rights disparities in their country. The movement ramped up further during that country's 2021 elections. The 4Bs in question are references to Korean terms regarding marriage, childbirth, dating, and sexual relationships. According to Catherine Moon, a political science professor at Wellesley College, The biggest difference between budding ideas for what the 4B movement could look like in the United States and what has already existed in South Korea is the centrality of marriage. That is not to diminish the great challenges that American women face, especially younger women, regarding reproductive rights, said Ms. Moon, whose research includes the U.S.-Korea alliance and East Asian politics. But for women and men in South Korea, until very recently, being a social adult, not coming of age at 18 or so, but being a socially recognized adult, marriage was mandated. Over the last 20 years, South Korean women have gained more equal access to education and have surpassed men in college enrollment rates, allowing them to entertain the possibility of a single life, according to Ms. Moon. However, not being married can result in women becoming social pariahs, and the rejection of marriage ideals has become a radical statement, Ms. Moon added. Searches for 4B movement in the United States spiked the day after the election, according to Google Trends. Dozens of videos on the topic have popped up on TikTok in the last 48 hours, with users sharing why they are for or against the movements gaining steam in the United States. With the overturning of Roe v. Wade and Mr. Trump's opposition to abortion, there's concern that his administration could enact a federal abortion ban. Couple that with the spread of online misogyny, known as the manosphere, and its subset of incel culture, among self-described involuntary celibates who disparage women, there's increased concern that women's rights will be further eroded. Alexa Vargas, a 26-year-old lab technician living in Boston, has incorporated the ideas of the 4B movement into her lifestyle. She had already been abstaining from dating and sex for more than 2 years, and following the results of the U.S. election, she decided to commit to the movement. I think that now, more than ever, I'm endorsing the idea of 4B, because women are just tired of men not really caring about our health and safety, she said. Although dating was a possibility for her one day, she said she wasn't prioritizing it right now. I think it would take a really special man to break this movement for me personally, she added. Ms. Moon said she didn't think the 4B movement would take off widely in the United States because the emphasis on not rewarding men with access to one's body was based on an issue, abortion rights, and not on a lifestyle. It's a temporary means to bring attention to the precarious situation of women with Trump and his ascending to power, she said. So it's not really about a total commitment to a way of life without men, whereas in South Korea, it is a way of life. There are concerns that the 4B movement might entice violence among men who disagree with a woman's right to abstain from the 4Bs, a reason Ms. Mevs is looking into boxing classes. She emphasized that women have never been guaranteed safety following rejection. If women doing this affects the entire country, good, and that's the message, she said. If you want this country to run effectively, maybe you need to give women back their rights. It is as simple as that.
Okay, what are my thoughts, feelings about this? It's an internet trend, but I like where your head is at. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how sad I feel for young women because social media has completely ruined young adulthood. It's completely ruined young womanhood in so many ways. We hear about there's a book that I ordered from a UK scholar called The Visibility Trap. And there's more and more research around the harms that young women internalize and how that leads to depression and anxiety and self-harm behaviors and all of that. But in addition to that, social media has ruined young men. And as wild as the 2000s were, it wasn't hard to find young men and boys who didn't hate women and girls. There is a different kind of hate and resentment being stirred and cultivated among the youngest generations of boys and men in the West. And I'm not making this up. I actually was just listening to an interview with a sociologist named Alice Evans, and maybe I'll play clips from it recently. And she talks about the emergence of hostile sexism among younger generations in the West, where, and this is exactly what the hell I was saying, these young men will say women can be leaders, women can go to work. It's normal for women to do that, but they will also say they're resentful of those gains that women have made, that they're not deserving, that they need to be taken down a peg. And more frameworks are being developed in order to track that. But I don't think it's been really deeply studied until recently. That the incel stuff is really well studied. The manosphere is increasingly well studied, but there is what are we gonna say, a purgatory space where it's not incel. You're not wanting to kill the cheerleader. You're not Elliot Rodger, but still you see that women under 30 in almost every major American city earn more than men under 30. For every women are earning degrees, women are explicitly saying, young women are explicitly saying they don't want to be in relationships with young men. They don't want to be around young men. And so the boys, the young men, are increasingly lonely and isolated and angry. And so while women internalize the harmful and negative messages that they get from social media, young men and young boys externalize it. They have to find an object, a subject, a direction to point their anger and their ire toward. And increasingly, it appears to be other young women. Because I swear, being 21 used to be so fun. Oh my God, being in your 20s used to be such a great time. It was so good, and we had fun, and we went to parties, and we freak danced, and you invited boys back to your dorm and pretended like you were gonna have sex, but then you were like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to wake up early tomorrow, you have to go. That is not what y'all are doing today. That's not what happened. And it sucks. I think the pandemic has ruined people's brains. Algorithms have rotted people's brains. And then there's just good old-fashioned, old-school misogyny, where women have adapted to new roles and men just haven't. And we're not going back. Like, not too much on Kamala Harris, but particularly with regard to where the economy is headed and how that benefits a more information technology economy, benefits women. It benefits people with soft skills. It benefits people who decide to go to college, which is overwhelmingly women. So we are experiencing this political regression, but the economic progression for women will continue. Because whatever Trump is putting forth, it's not a reshuffling of the economic order. That's not what's on the table. So let's watch Miss Mev's video, her 4B video.
This isn't a political post. This is a women's post. A quick rundown on what you need to do when wanting to participate in the 4B movement and you don't know where to start. And number one, before even ceasing contact with men, is to sign up for a self-defense class and go get that thing registered. Go get a license, go get a permit, go get you something. Get you something to protect yourself. Train yourself to protect yourself, because all the women are saying, oh, I'm not giving it up, I'm not giving it. Guess what? They're going to take it. They have always taken it. They're just going to take it more now. So after you've taken your karate classes or you've registered that thing, that heat, we're going to move on to the dating apps. Delete all profiles. Don't just delete the app, delete the profiles, and then delete the app. Third step, stop talking to the men. Delete, block, say your goodbyes, and leave it at that. And honey, it's really not that hard. Let's grow up. If you're really serious about doing it, this probably won't be too hard for you. The fourth thing, and it probably should have been the second, to be honest, get your bodily affairs in order. Whether that means stocking up on certain pills, stocking up on birth control pills, getting them tube side. Hell, remove your uterus. Just to be extra safe. Like, I don't know. Again, it does not matter if you say you're not going to give it up, because everything that men haven't been given willingly, they have taken. All right, ladies, we have some work to do before January. Hey, I almost forgot. Go get you a rose off Amazon right now.
Okay. So I understand what's going on here. I understand why it's going on. My first instinct was, but y'all are gonna do that anyway. Like, fewer people are dating, fewer people are having sex. Y'all are gonna do that anyway. So is there? I don't know if it's that much of a sacrifice. My other instinct is, you don't want to constantly be reacting to men. I'm drawn to feminism. My orientation is towards feminism because my orientation is toward justice. And justice extends beyond punishing men by not having sex. And I think young Gen X and millennials, we really got sexual liberation wrong. And I don't think it's our fault that we got it wrong. We were just trying to figure our shit out. But I do think that it wasn't quite right. Let's get a little bit more, and I'll expand on that later. I do want to pull up these tweets. This is Jessica Valenti. If you want to know where young American women are, the Google search term, interest for the 4B movement says it all. Look at that. Up and to the right, for sure. For sure. And then, what is it? Option. Reminder that the 4B movement and the separatist movement in general isn't just about avoiding men. It's all about supporting and investing in women. Seek out relationships with women, women-owned businesses, women-made media. Surround yourself with women and our culture. Yeah. So I like the idea of women, young women, coming together to say, I want to exert more control over people. I want to exert more control over my body in spite of the people who are explicitly or implicitly telling me that they want to control my body. I like that. Again, we just can't always just be windmilling against men, but I get it. That's where a lot of people start. Okay. 2, I watched a string of 4B videos, and some of them are like, yes, girl, we got it. And the white women shaving their head like Britney Spears in 2007. But there was also a strain of that video. Let's go to the chat view. There's also a strain of that video that just felt a little too begging and pleading. I don't think that we should be begging the people responsible for our suffering to validate our suffering. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think that this is going to really take hold, because women still want to be with men. Like some, a lot. And women still want to have sex and maybe not be long-term partnered and be dating, but like there's just too many women who want to do it. Even if they don't want to do it now, I promise you, I did not even consider seriously being in a real relationship until I was 31. It didn't even cross my mind as like something I could really sustain. I had boyfriends before, but it was always shaky. It was always a little, But is there a way to, Andrea Dworkin would say no. Is there a way to engage romantically or sexually with men and not always be psychologically or physically vulnerable? Not really. And that's the feminists, we have to be honest. There's only so much tinkering and tailoring and amending and reimagining that we can really do within the confines of a heterosexual partnership or heterosexual marriage. And that is just the truth. The other thing that came to mind here is everything old is new again, because we are back politically to a pre-Roe versus Wade time. People are adopting pre-Roe versus Wade politics. And so this politic, I understand, is inspired by South Korean women, but this has happened not only in the West before, in the United States before. It's happened decades ago in other countries. I'm thinking of African feminisms have done this kind of thing. Somebody in the chat mentioned Lysistrata, the Greek myth. This is a thing where I, years ago, for the For Harriet website, interviewed a poet named Cheryl Clark. And Cheryl Clark considers herself to be, I think she might have passed away. Wait, let me make sure that I am not, Okay, still alive. Oof, sorry. Back to it. Years ago, I entered a Black woman poet and writer named Cheryl Clark, and Cheryl describes herself as a political lesbian. And in the 70s, she embraced political lesbianism, saying, I am 100% going to extract myself from romantic and sexual relationships with men. Now, in the Born This Way era, that is quote unquote controversial. The idea that somebody can pick, but that is what she said. And actually, let me make a note that I might just go ahead and republish that interview on the New for Harriet site. Okay, Cheryl Clark. But the idea is being emotionally and physically and financially intertwined with men does make fighting the patriarchy harder. It does. And that's why we see over and over again that as women get more education and make more money, their desire for that traditional heterosexual partnership decreases, and the likelihood that they will have children decreases. There are a couple of other issues that I wanted to make sure to touch on. Speaking of, worldwide efforts to reverse the baby shortage are falling flat. So, across the world, we're having these conversations about the falling birth rate, the rapidly declining birth rate. But it's not just an American problem, not just a US problem. Let's just look at the graphs. Fertility, US, Hungary, Norway, Europe. Down, down, sugar, we're going down swinging. I'll be your number one with a bullet. Okay. Here's some. Oof. There's Hungary falling off the cliff. Okay. Percentage of women. Okay. And then let's go here. US fertility rate. Now all of my pop-ups coming up. Hide. U.S. fertility rate falls to a record low. Fewer babies were born in the U.S. in 2023 than any year since 1979. Okay, total fertility fell to 1.62 births per woman in 2023, a 2% decline from the year earlier. Let's look here. Oof. Yikes. The total fertility rate peaked during the baby boom after World War II with a rate of more than 3 births per woman before falling through the 1960s and 70s. More recently, the total fertility rate has declined steadily since hitting 2.12 births per woman in 2007 before the financial crisis. So basically, the United States has never recovered from the GFC, as the economics girls call it, the Great Financial Crisis. Here we go. Births continue to fall. Look at that. Birth rate and death rate almost touching. Y'all voted for the man who let the death rate get like that? For real? Okay, it's fine. We're fine. Let's move on. Birth rates by age group. Now, this is really interesting. There are almost as many births for women between 40 and 44 as there are between teenage girls between 15 and 19. That is wild. That is so fascinating to me. So interesting. Slowly ticking up. Man. And in the 90s, the teen pregnancy thing was a huge deal. And now that's fallen off the cliff. And we see it so low for the 20s. Look at that. Birth rate for women in late 30s nears rate for women in their early 20s. Birth rates decline more for younger women between 2022 2023, according to the provisional data, while those for women in their 40s were unchanged. Women in their mid to late 30s are having children at similar rates to those in their early to mid 20s. Yeah. That's interesting. Fertility rates by race and ethnicity. We're all going down. We're all going down. This is why they're talking about mass deportations, that Hispanic number. Fertility rates fall for race and ethnic groups. The general fertility rate dropped 3% to 54.4 births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 44, with declines across most race and ethnicity groups tracked by the federal government. The fertility rate for Hispanic women, after rising in 2022, fell by 1% to 65 births per 1,000 women. Among non-Hispanic groups, fertility rates for American Indian and Alaska Native and Black women fell by 5% and 3% for Asian and white women. What else do we got here? I think I have some other notes. Oh, yeah, there was something else that I wanted to... This one. So despite all of the conversation about a federal election having no bearing on whether or not abortion remains accessible to most of the country, that's just not true. That's false. let's go through why a 19th century law matters in the Supreme Court abortion pill fight. Now, this was already decided. The court did not make a decision about whether or not mifepristone, which is an essential component of medical abortion, can remain legal and accessible, because they dismissed the case on standing. So they are saying the people who brought the case that would potentially ban mifepristone, which would essentially eliminate medical abortion, that they could not rule on it because the people who brought it were not the correct parties. They weren't injured parties. And they didn't say we want to affirm access to this. They just said you got to find somebody who has been harmed. And now we have multiple states who are bringing suits to potentially ban mifepristone, again, an essential part of medical abortion. And a part of the states, their injury, the harm, they're literally saying this has decreased the teen birth rate. There would be more people in our states. There would be a larger tax base. I know for sure Louisiana did this, and I think multiple attorneys general are going to come together to bring this to ultimately to the Supreme Court, that broaden access to this medication has decreased their ability to raise taxes, to raise revenues. That's a real, it's in the New York Times. Maybe I'll go ahead and find that article. In fact, let's let I don't know if y'all are going to be able to hear this. Let me know if you can hear the automatic voice. Oh, you can't hear it. Okay. All right. Well, I found the next one. A 19th century law that anti abortion advocates tout could play a key role in the Supreme Court case on access to abortion medication. Why it matters. Justices referenced the law known as the Comstock Act as they heard oral arguments Tuesday in FDA versus Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, which could have far reaching consequences, the big picture. The Food and Drug Administration approved mifepristone for use back in 2000. I literally remember that, which is so crazy. Since 2016, the FDA has taken steps to expand access to the medication by expanding the timeline during which it can be taken and allowing patients to get it by mail. At issue before the court is whether the FDA erred in permitting expanded access. By reimposing those restrictions, the court could further limit abortion access after it overturned Roe v. Wade. Medication abortions. This is a big, I actually did not know this. Medication abortions accounted for 63% of all U.S. abortions in 2023, the highest share on record, according to the Guttmacher Institute, a research organization that supports abortion rights. What's the Comstock Act? The 1873 Comstock Act banned the mailing of materials that were deemed obscene, lewd, lascivious, which included things like contraception, abortion drugs, and pornography. While the law has been narrowed since its inception, the abortion provision has remained in place, though it was not enforced while Roe v. Wade was president. Specifically, the Comstock Act declares every article or thing designed, adapted, or intended for producing abortion to be non-mailable. When the Dobbs decision ended federal protections for abortion, the Comstock Act became potentially enforceable once again. Some anti-abortion advocates have even argued that the Comstock Act could enable the next Republican president to effectively ban most abortions. After the Dobbs decision, the Biden administration released a memo arguing that the Comstock Act doesn't ban the mailing of abortion drugs for lawful purposes. Shout out to the Biden administration for that memo. Okay. Why is it relevant to this case? The current case before the Supreme Court, actually, let's move on. Okay. Kaczmarek cited the Comstock Act in his ruling, arguing the law prohibits Okay, this is Texas District. The case currently before the court has been narrowed. Fifth Circuit partially blocked. The Supreme Court temporarily blocked. Okay. This is what we should be concerned about. Conservative Supreme Court Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas both brought up the Comstock Act during Tuesday's hearing. Alito argued that the Comstock Act is a prominent provision and not some obscure subsection of complicated, obscure law. Thomas, in questioning a lawyer for Danco Laboratories, noted that the Comstock Act is fairly broad and it specifically covers drugs such as yours. They are telegraphing their intentions. Yeah, they're telegraphing their intentions there. So as that makes its way through the courts, let's share this one. States revive lawsuit to sharply curb access to abortion. Oh, it's because I'm not logged in. Anyways, I won't be able to read it all because I'm not logged in, but they have filed new suits this year in order to ban mailing of mifepristone, which would essentially eliminate access to the protocol that ends or terminates 63% of that. The medication used in 63% of abortions, I shouldn't say 63% of pregnancies, that's not true. It's used in 63% of abortions. Okay. That feels like the future, the not so distant future. So shout out to that. Shout out to that. Any other thoughts? Final thoughts on 4B. Where do I think we're going to go from here? I don't know, but I think it's at least good for women to be seriously thinking about their relationship to sex and sexuality when sex has become so much more dangerous. Oh, I remember I was going to come back around to millennials and Gen X, just not exactly getting sexual liberation right. I was raised by boomers. Old school Southern Black religious boomers. I grew up in a very feminized, not feminist, feminized. Well, feminist in the fact that, my mom did have, girls can do anything job, but she was still very adherent to normative ideals and ideas about gender. And we present ourselves this way. We're definitely a get dressed up, be curly, wear dresses family, and we go to church every week, multiple times a week. My mother and father met in church. Okay. And so hearing so much conservatism and hearing primarily about the strictures of religion and what you can't do and why you can't do it, and hearing about punishment for behaving in certain ways and dressing in certain ways, it fucked up generations upon generations of women and generations of Black women in particular. And I've spent a lot of time over the years talking to Black women about having to wrestle with that socialization, wrestle with that teaching, and figure out a positive sexuality. And a part of that process of figuring out a positive sexuality is pushing sexual liberation to its fucking limits. Okay. But sexual liberation is really, you get to control who you have sex with. how you show up. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's not. It's not a bad thing. We can't just give up on it. It's really important and needed. But we called performing persistently for men in a way that maybe wasn't always 100% authentic to what we wanted or desired. We called that liberation. I've already articulated this. I've gone over it numerous times. In fact, let me make a note to myself to link all of the videos and articles I've written or edited about this. Link sexual liberation articles. We've gone over this, right? It's like you're a young woman and you're trying on your mom's shoes. You're trying on your mom's clothes. You're trying to figure it out. What works? What are the boundaries? What makes you feel good? What doesn't? And because a lot of that was in reaction to the ways that the ways that older generations tried to control, tried to dictate, it feels good to rebel. And I think that point of rebellion is still really important, that exploration and figuring things out, determining it, that's still really important. I don't think enough of us had the opportunity to really explore and mold our own sexual identities and sexual ideals outside of all of the images and ideals that had been fed to us. We didn't. And so it ended up often, and not always. In fact, there are some people who have really done it right. And even the people who I think maybe exactly didn't get quite there, I appreciate the effort. Because pushing boundaries is an important, you got to test the boundaries to figure out where the boundaries should be. It's a part of fucking womanhood, okay? But then, and by the way, that process of pushing boundaries and experimenting and trial and error, even if you don't exactly get it right, it's still a good time. It's still a good, like, I still have great stories and have great stories shared with friends and peers and great fun memories of just maybe taking it just a little too far. But then you're like, oh, well, didn't exactly work out, but I had to do it to know not to do it. But I have had conversations with older Black feminists over the years. In particular, I'm talking about a really memorable conversation I had with Loretta Ross years ago. She's old school feminist activist icon, just a seminal figure in the reproductive justice space. I think she might have coined the term reproductive justice, which is the ability to have all of the children that you want to have and none of the children you don't want to have. But I remember having a conversation with her years ago, and she said something to the effect of, how are you liberated if you don't even know how your puss works? Something like that. She might not, maybe she used coochie or something like that. I don't know. Whatever the Black elders say. How are you liberated if you're still afraid to look inside your vagina? And she had a point. She had a point. It can't always be about, and that's one way that I think the performance of sex positivity and sexual liberation. It was an important step. It was an important step. And I am not shaming anybody who took the steps and tried the things on. We had to do it. But everybody that comes after says, okay, maybe I don't want to take that step. And that is how, in the timeline, the feminist where theory meets praxis timeline, we're all connected. It's a chain. I heard a historian say, I think her first name was Chloe. I can't remember what her last name. I want to say Fields. For some reason, Fields. Is Chloe Fields a historian of note? I'm sorry. It's not coming up. But she said, she's a historian of women's history, and she said, the waves construct of feminism is not right. It's not accurate. We do it because it's nice and neat. It's an easy shorthand to succinctly summarize the big ideas or the big main pushes of each era, but it's not about waves. It's a continuum. The waves thing minimizes how different generations of feminists, different generations of women invested in the social, economic, political liberation of women learn from each other. We're constantly in conversation. And I'm a 35-year-old woman. I sometimes see the 18-year-olds and I'm like, oh, not for me. And then the 20-somethings are like, you liberal auntie. And it's like, okay, girl, I get it, But we are literally and figuratively dialoguing, going back and forth. It's a push and pull, trying to figure the shit out. So errors are to be expected, and even errors are not exactly errors. It's iteration, it's refinement. Because I actually think it is objectively a good thing that there was that period. It's objectively a good thing we had the Little Kim period. Objectively a good thing that we had a Grace Jones willing to break the mold and be assertive. It's objectively a good thing that we have cultural figures like a Janet Jackson who experiments with queer iconography and explores bisexuality and sexuality and BDSM in music and culture. It's a good thing that young women feel like they can have honest conversations about sex and their sex lives and what their desires are. So you don't have to agree, or we don't have to whitewash or valorize every single expression of quote unquote liberation. But one, I respect people's right to do it. I honor that right and I will fucking defend that right. Even if it's not for me. That's the other thing. There's this thing that people are like, why would you defend something you wouldn't do? There's lots of shit I wouldn't do. Lots of shit. I wouldn't live in New York City, but I defend your right to do it. Like there's so many actions and behaviors that I would not do, but I defend your right to do it. And I defend your right as a woman to be sexy, be sexual, figure your shit out, what works for you, what doesn't, set the boundaries that you want to set. Now, sometimes I am like, all right, okay. It's a bit, I'm not sure it's doing what you think it's doing, but if somebody comes pounding at your door being like, shut the, bitch, put your shit on, I am not going to attack you. I'm going to attack them. And this does remind me of Megan Thee Stallion a lot around the stuff with her and Tory Lanez. The slut shaming around her having a sexual relationship with Tory Lanez. First of all, we all knew Megan was lying. Like, Megan, we knew you were lying. Megan, we knew you were lying, but you know what? Look, you were lying. But I get why you would lie. Totally. Of course. And what does that have to do with her getting shot? Like, help me out. How does 2 + 2 equal 4 there? Oh, lying about what? In Megan's documentary that I believe is on Amazon Plus, she talks about being asked in an interview with Gayle King about whether or not she had had sex with Tory Lanez, and she said no. We knew that was a lie at the time, girl. We knew. Okay. And we know that it was kind of scandalous that you were hooking up with that man when your friend was also hooking up with that man. But you know what? Again, do we all get it right? No. Do I 100% agree with that decision? No. But what does that have to do with the lady getting shot? Kelsey had a man and it wasn't Tory. And there's that. Did you see that post where women were showing their baby daddies? Women need to lie more. I did not see that post. I didn't. But that's funny. Somebody help me out. Stats say 65% don't get an orgasm during sex. So what's the obsession? I'm confused. So of course, we are talking about, I assume you're talking about penetrative vaginal sex. And I think it is possible. I don't know. Is this controversial? I'm not sure. I can't relate. I do think as you get older, sex gets better. But I think it is possible to enjoy the feeling of being connected to your partner, even if you're not having an orgasm, or at least that's what the girls say. Do you remember that season of Married at First Sight where it was a black couple too? The black couple, it was a black girl, black woman, and she had never had an orgasm, but she was having sex with her husband, and she said, well, I haven't had an orgasm yet, but I like being close to him. That's what the girls say. some women actually argue down that orgasms are overrated and they don't like having them. No, I'm sorry. I think they just get upset at how hard they have to try and give up. Well, that's just everybody walk your own walk, follow your arrow, as Casey Musgraves would say, but that sounds fake. Oh, she was, yeah. Cishet women, y'all are killing me. I mean, it's real. It's, we've got to close the orgasm gap. I mean, yes, we do. And that's another kind of conversation. Do I have anything else? The Comstock. Why is my microphone keep turning? The Comstock Act. Millennials kind of messed up with sexual liberation. Oh, the other thing is because every generation has their own mores around sexuality and what is transgressive and what isn't transgressive, and what pushes boundaries, what defies expectations, and what doesn't. I've said this before, but I think that creates misrecognition of actions and behaviors between generations. Young women have grown up in an era. If you are 22 now, Instagram has been around since 2010, 2011. You only know an era where women are exposed on the internet and delight in that exposure and do it to themselves and for themselves and are the primary financial beneficiaries of that exposure. It's different for somebody who's 35. It's different for somebody who is 45 or older. And that colors the kinds of conversations that we're able to have. Any other thoughts? I truly think it's because my family never talked about sex with us girls. There are two. Oh, okay, wait. Decenter men. I forgot. I was going to talk about that. I truly think it's because my family never talked about sex with us girls. There are two women, ones that keep sex private and ladies of the night. Yeah, I think that there's I've heard the idea of, if you don't want to be shamed, just don't talk about it. I think it's so important and critical that we talk about sex and our sex lives and the physical, the emotional, the psychological impacts of sex, that sex can be fun and great and it's natural, and sex can be not so great and not so fun. And I hope that we are moving to exploring the positives and the negatives, but in a post-Roe world, the negatives are the exposure to potential liability is just, again, it makes me so sad. We used to talk about a hoe phase. Millennials, y'all remember that? Millennials, remember when we used to talk about having a hoe phase and it was a great time? The girls aren't talking about hoe phases anymore. Not to my knowledge. But I get it. I get it. Because what are you getting? That's like, hoe phase is like 2 seasons of storyline on Insecure. Maybe 3. That's half of Insecure is the millennial hoe phase. Yeah. And it's totally reasonable to not feel safe. Standards, boundaries, and expectations is what women lack and why you have a hoe phase. Oh, I am not shaming the hoe phase. I am not shaming the hoe phase. It was a period of maturation, figuring out what you like, what you don't, what you're into, what you're not into. You trade the stories with your friends. Dude, there's just so many things. There's in college and immediately post college, you go to parties, and afterwards you trade the stories with your friends. And there's some things called DFMO, dance floor makeout. Y'all don't DFMO no more. You find somebody at the party, and look, the right Love in This Club comes on, and you're making out. Do y'all still do that? In my Sweden college, we used to move all the furniture, throw the party, people dancing on the walls. At the end of the night, there's jean stains on the wall. It was what it was. And if the boys hated women, if the young men hated women, we never heard it. If they were woman haters, they did it on their own. They didn't telegraph it to the world on social media. So we could all DFMO in peace. Y'all don't wear heels to the club. Yeah, look, the millennial aunties. Look, we're just reminiscing. We're just reminiscing. Allow me to reminisce. Jean stains on the wall. I think people are afraid of getting filmed, but I think we are about to see the club become fun again. I think that there is a turn away from documenting every single thing. I even noticed this in my own life. I don't want to pull out the phone every time I go out to dinner or every time I hang out. I don't want to take pictures or boomerangs or whatever of the food or the drink or whatever. I don't want to take a selfie with my nieces every time we hang out. It's just not. Why? But beyond that, especially when it comes to my interactions with children, I am much more cognizant of how I am modeling behaviors, about how I am setting the norms of our interaction, how I make it normal for every outing, every experience to be mediated by the cell phone. And that's not the kind of behavior that I want to pass on to children. Gen Z was not able to socialize like yours due to social media and everything being on camera. Yeah, I will say again and again, and we'll wrap it up here. Millennials in particular, and this really is millennials. I'm going to blame Mark Zuckerberg. If I'm 35, he's 38, 39. No, Mark Zuckerberg wasn't in college when I was in college, so he might be 40. Millennials might have ruined the internet. I mean, social media truly. Ooh, I'm so low. I'm supposed to be sitting on my. I have to be careful because I don't have pants on. I have to be careful. Shout out to Abortion is Healthcare. Abortion is Healthcare. Shopcaneup.com. the Jack Dorsey is not a millennial. He's definitely Gen X, right? They had no idea. How could they have known? They had no idea what havoc these platforms would wreak. They couldn't have known. We had no clue that we were rotting our brains. And I mean literally rotting our brains, eroding our cognitive skills by becoming addicted to social media. We didn't know. And they probably knew way before we did. But then with our rotten brains, we normalized that behavior among Gen Z and now Gen Alpha. And so at least as a 35-year-old woman, I had the opportunity to have the most crucial parts of my brain formed before being introduced to these technologies that literally dampen your ability to do multi-step, sequential, high order, high level thinking. But a lot of people didn't get to have their brains fully formed before that was introduced. And that is such a tragedy, a real tragedy, a true and genuine failure. And this is not hyperbole. And I'm not speculating. It's been measured and studied, reproduced. And now I say all the time, if I ever become a parent, which who knows, I might be one of those 45-year-old women. I don't know. I don't know. I see pregnant women now and I'm like, ew, yuck. still. I just saw that Sky Jackson is pregnant and I'm like, ew, like, why do y'all want to do that? Like, gross. Since we're here, since I'm here, I do have some feelings, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna do this over here or over there, but since we're here, about the young celebrities who have babies with their first or second like serious boyfriend. I'm like, we've gone all the way on the other side. Like millennials grew up in the height of the scary teen pregnancy era. So we just got because if we go back to that graph, you saw the rapid decline in teen pregnancy. That was about messaging. That was about structural transformation. As we get into the late 2000s, it's about Obamacare providing increased access to contraception. Also, I remember the morning after pill becoming accessible. I remember because I was fucking okay. I remember. It does seem like we were like, no. And then it does seem like, and of course, this is a very small sample size because teen pregnancy, as we know, is the lowest it's ever been. And young woman pregnancy is the lowest it's ever been. But I keep seeing like these young women, like 21, 22, 23. I'm like, what the heck? Are you sure you want to have a baby by your first boyfriend? Having a baby by my first boyfriend would be hell. Hell. Oh my God. When I see Halle Bailey, first of all, the aunties told y'all. Now look, do what you want. It's your life. Actually, we don't know that lady. And of course, she doesn't have to freaking listen to us. Of course, she shouldn't listen to us. We don't know anything. She's rich and beautiful and talented and famous. And just because we could all see that man was a loser, a fucking loser, just because we could all see that DDG was bad news, she's not obligated. Hey, it's your life, okay? But it was an ending that many could have predicted. But I just remember like your first, yeah, give it some time, you know? If you want to have babies, do not do the millennial thing. You don't have to wait until you're 38 to have a baby. Like again, another thing that we just took a little too far for the girls cuz I have always been an outlier in saying I don't care about having kids. But all of the women, the young women, my college roommates, the millennial women that I have known and interacted with and befriended over the years, they all say they do. And of like best college friends, the number who are married and have kids, I still think we're at 15, 20%. I'm 35. We might be inching up to, I want to say, are we inching up to 25%? I'm not even sure if we're inching up to. I've seen a couple people get engaged recently, but like not for real. So maybe we'll say between 1 and 4 and 1 and 5. We'll say between 1 and 3 and 1 and 4 have children or are married. Because we just got the messaging. Push it, push it, push it, push it. My mom, who literally got married for the first time when she was in college, was always like, push it, push it. And now she's like, now wait a second. Now wait a second now. But like again, we were all just trying to figure it out. It's a new world, a different world, different access, different opportunities. I personally don't feel pressure because my sister had children, but when were you for, they said having a baby would ruin your life. Now they say have a baby for the economy and birth rate. Hard pass. Yeah. And that's another thing that comes up in that Wall Street Journal article. And this is a woman in Hungary, a Hungarian woman who's are saying the government can't put replacing the workforce on the shoulders of women. Like that's not going to work. I think a lot of women in the West are saying the same. Like, that's a you problem. Replacing the workforce is a you problem. They wanted us to believe sex was more casual than it should have been. Men make babies like Tic Tacs. Korean women have said no thanks, not having children, and the government is stressing out. Well, governments across the West are stressing out. There's a baby bust across the world, globally. My bestie got pregnant at 26, and I felt like that was too young. Having children with anyone is a gamble, but if you care about not being a single mom, finding a man who is responsible enough to sign the paper with you significantly increases your odds. Okay, here's the thing. I have been saying literally since I was 15 or 16, I did not want to have kids, but I also said that if there came a time when I wanted to have children, I would get married or I would wait until I was married because there are structures, because we are still where we are. The institution of marriage, the structure of marriage, does provide children with a little bit more stability. But also, let me finish this thought before I circle back around, before I give the caveat. So, I read this book called The Two-Parent Privilege by economist Melissa Kearney. And it's a very controversial book, controversial idea about how we need to be using the structures of the government and using the institutions of culture to push the idea that women have to or should, or it's good or important for women to wait until they get married before they have children. Now, she explains why that's just probably not going to happen, but that is the argument. And I am not deeply invested in that. But one thing that Melissa Kearney underscores in her exploration of all of the research is, in the United States, for reasons we don't exactly know, but the relationship between father and child is more durable when the child is had in the confines of marriage. In Europe, meaning, let me just go back to meaning, it is much less likely for a divorced dad to completely lose contact with the child or cut out the child, abandon the child financially, than it is for a cohabitating dad. And we're not exactly, she hypothesized about why that might be, but question mark, okay? More data needed. But that is not true in Europe. In Europe, the divorced dad and the formerly cohabitated or partner dad have the same bond, the same relationship, the same amount of intimacy and interaction. There's no discernible difference. Do we know why are people? I need to put my phone on do not disturb. What's going on? It's okay. Okay, should have been on, but there's also legal stuff and financial stuff, incentives to marrying before you birth a child. But that only works if the person that you marry is not going to be a drain. So this is like the complicated part about this. I'm trying to sit up. This is the complicated about this, especially for Black women, and it's especially complicated as women become, more women of different races and ethnicities become the primary earner and the primary breadwinner. Is if you are practicing hypergamy or homogamy, it makes sense. If you are marrying hypogamously, you're on the hook. When people were telling Keke Palmer, "Oh, you should have waited to get married, to have a baby and whatever," and then you see how that ended up, we can have whatever conversation you want about, "Oh, she shouldn't have had the baby," or the baby is here. The baby's here. She got pregnant. She had a baby. Cute little light-skinned baby with a old school Black man name. But that situation is 10 times worse for her if she were married. So It's very much increasingly, it's getting a little bit trickier. And hypogamy, marrying down, is increasing across the world. It is increasing notably in the United States for white women because, as we have talked about time and time again, white men are not doing great. Ooh, and we'll end it here. I just read. Oh, this is when I wish I had my freaking other laptop here so I could name you the paper, but let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. It's called Mismatch. Mismatches. Ooh, this is the good thing about writing down every single thing you read, you guys. You got to write it down. It's a paper called Mismatches in the Marriage Market by Daniel Lichter, Joseph P. Price, and Jeffrey Swigert. It examines demographic imbalances in the U.S. marriage market, focusing on the shortage of economically attractive marital partners for unmarried women. Using data from the American Community Survey 2008 to 2012 and 2013 to 2017, the researchers imputed, quote, synthetic spouses, unquote, to estimate what the socio-demographic characteristics of potential husbands would look like if unmarried women were to marry men similar to those married to demographically similar women. And what they found, the shortage of suitable partners is particularly pronounced for Black women who face high rates of singlehood due to the unavailability of economically, quote, unquote, marriageable Black men, partly due to factors like incarceration rates and lower employment among minority men. And I should say this was published in 2019. Changing marriage dynamics. The study notes a shift from women marrying up socioeconomically to marrying down, as the pool of high-income, college-educated men has not kept pace with the rise in women's socioeconomic status. Due to the imbalances, some women remain unmarried or choose partners who do not match their socioeconomic aspirations, impacting traditional patterns of assortative mating. And the other thing that they note there, I won't read more, is it's particularly bad for all Black women and college-educated white women. There just aren't enough partners that match their criteria. And I think the big innovation about that study was generally when people talk about the marriage market and the availability or lack thereof of economically suitable partners, they're just doing how many men are in this age cohort and how many people are in this financial bracket, but they're not actually doing how many exact matches for this woman's income, wealth, education are there? Are there enough exact matches for her ideal partner if the marriage market was working efficiently? The answer is no. According to Lichter, Price, and Swigert. But of course, we knew that. That's been time and time again studied. Like, I'm not even going off into that. Just stop listening to people who don't know what they're talking about. Please. Just stop listening to influencers. Okay. Go to the books. Go to JSTOR. Go to Google Scholar. Where did I get this? Where did I download this one from? Where was this published? The Journal of Marriage and Family. But duh, we knew that. There just aren't. Hypogamy is the norm moving forward, and that's why the girls are stressed. The girls are stressed because marrying somebody who has less than you, especially if you're the one who has to carry the babies, it creates a lot of tension. I hate this discussion as the entire focus of it. Oh, I hate this discussion as the entire focus of it is on finding a good provider, which doesn't guarantee a happy, fulfilling marriage at all. Okay, true. However, and this is where I think the feminist girls, and I'm glad that we're being more honest about this. Heterosexual marriage, the dangling carrot on the stick of heterosexual marriage for women has always been financial stability. That's the reason why it's a carrot that people can dangle. It is access to stability, staying the same, or moving up. That's the whole point. So if you eliminate the ability to reliably stay the same or move up, and then you have to take on, because if we're talking about the division of labor inside of home and outside the home, women work outside the home, have always worked outside the home, if you're Black. But it's how much work are you having to do outside the home and inside the home that does create fractures in marriage. And that is one of the reasons why, not me being Kimberly the fake sociologist today, but marriages among low income or working class people are particularly fractious and fragile because those economic shocks and that economic stress really breaks down marital relationships. And we see increasingly the most stable, longest lasting marriages are people who are the most educated and have some of the highest incomes, because that big thing that was on the table is off the table. Now, you can argue about all the other kinds of stuff, right? Like, Michelle Obama talking about how she had 10 years of bad marriage to Barack Obama. That's not financial. But imagine if they had those 10 years when he was off trying to be a political superstar and they were broke. Yikes. So I do think that if you don't need the money, partnership is only worth it if being partner brings a sense of meaning or purpose, or if it brings joy and fun and lightness, or just stability. And a lot of men are good vibes. I mean, a lot of men are bad vibes, I should say. A lot of men are bad vibes for all kinds of reasons. And yeah, I'm sorry. This has been a very heteronormative conversation. I'm so sorry to the queer girls, to the lesbian girls. Tia was also dealing with a bitter, unhappy man along with being the breadwinner. I have not watched that show, but this is a reminder. Let me remind myself to watch Tia show. How long have we been here? We'll hit 2 hours. Years ago, I read an article that the most cited reason for divorce is financial issues. I wouldn't be surprised if this is still the case. Yeah, and by the way, divorce is way down. Marriage rates are way down, but divorce rates are also way down. I wouldn't say 4B specifically is the large part of a factor in the low birth rate. It's mostly how much people are expected to work, not denying that there's a serious misogyny issue there, though. Oh, no. 4B is not a US-based movement, so I wouldn't say that it's that the low birth rate or the declining birth rate is correct. Can I talk? I wouldn't say that the years of decline in the US birth rate is because of 4B. That would be nonsensical. But I think that there are a number of factors at play, including more and more women expressing disinterest in romantic or sexual relationship with men. There's a lot of, and people are still partnering up and having sex and whatever, but there's just a lot of people opting out of heterosexuality in particular. But there are also a lot of people who want to have children or thought that they would have children and don't. Feel like they can't afford it, feel like they don't have the time, feel like they don't want to give up the time. And I actually really feel for those people. When I was in my 20s saying that I never wanted to have children, I did not expect that so many women I knew in my 20s would not have children when we were this age. It's, I mean, if I can immediately think of 30 Black women I went to college with, I would say 10 of 30. As you get older, I mean, it's just not. And so something is happening. Not even on some hate men stuff, just dating has become exhausting and or boring. Did you see the Surgeon General's mental health and well-being advisory on parenthood? Oh my god, yeah. Yeah. There's just so much. The thing with Tia M show is that she's being dishonest about why she left Corey. Tia is finally rejecting the ideals that her parents bestowed upon her, but she's fearful of critiquing them publicly. Interesting. Yeah, I think I saw a clip on Instagram where she was saying that, Corey was my first everything, my first boyfriend. Clearly, she's also talking about her first sexual partner, and she didn't have sex until she was 25. Like, I am sorry. The older Gen X girls, the middle and up Gen X girls were in slavery. I'm sorry. That's just absurd. That's just absurd. You're 45. You had how many sexual partners? I'm sorry. Y'all can critique the whole phase all you want. I can talk about maybe we just took it a little too far. We didn't know what we were doing, but we got to find a middle ground. We've got to find a balance. If you are a Black woman over the age of 46, you deserve compensation. Because women should be able to have the number of kids they want to have. Why would someone want to have sex with a man? No one has explained this to me yet. If you don't want to have sex, like if that has to be explained, then you shouldn't have sex. Oh, there's also something else that I listened to a podcast where a researcher said this, but I meant to go back and read their book about the potentially biological reasons why across the globe people are having fewer children, I think that the verdict is still out, but I think that there is a mixture of biological and sociological, cultural reasons why people are having fewer and fewer children. Y'all are just a lot less horny than we used to be. I don't know if it's because, and I'm not even judging. I'm not even judging. I think a lot of people's dopamine receptors are fried. And I think it is particularly pernicious for young people. Your dopamine receptors are fried, so the pleasure thing is just not. But when I had my first boyfriend, senior year of high school, we were humping because I wanted to like it. We because it was a desire. Nobody had to coach me into it or convince me, or I wanted to. And I totally respect the girls who say you have no desire to have sex. It doesn't interest you at all. You'd rather watch YouTube, you'd rather scroll TikTok. I'm saying that that was just not the case. Nobody had to coerce me, and nobody did because I had goals. But I wasn't coerced into having sex when I was a teenager. Like it was it now I was 18. Was I 18? Yeah, I was 18. But so the question of why would you want to do that is like, okay, we're just coming from different places. Yeah, there's a porn epidemic going on, and a lot of men are falling into it for sure. I think it's young men, their brains are fried from the porn epidemic. And I think young women, their brains might be fried from other stuff, but also a disgust, a distaste for the compulsory, coercive nature of sexuality in the modern era. I feel like people are having sex with themselves. Did people stop doing that, or are we talking about teenagers? I don't know what the kids are doing. I don't know what the kids are doing. And honestly, I don't really like to go too deep into that. What time is it? Okay, I have 8 more minutes. We're going to wrap this up at the stream up at 2 hours, but a tangential point, y'all have convinced me to listen to Addison Rae or whatever. And that Diet Pepsi song is about having sex as a teenage. I'm like, ew, I don't actually want to listen to, I don't really want to listen to somebody talking about having sex as a really young person. I'm not, and I'm so happy for you. And I am going to congratulate you and I celebrate you, but I don't want to listen to that casually. Asexuality is so real, man. The only thing that makes me quiver is bread. Yes, Tanya, that is what the song is about. To be honest, Earth is full, and with the climate catastrophes afoot, with so much more to come, cooling off on increasing the number of people that have to deal with the crumbs of the future, props not so bad. Well, I would say I veer away from the Earth is full talk because I do think that that is weaponized against non-white people in the world. But I think that if you see how things are going and you say, not for me, totally legitimate. I believe that young people are having less sex statistically. I'm in a weird spot where my true self is a humper and shamelessly slow. Think Samantha from SITC, Sex and the City type. But I'm so heartbroken from my last relationship and melancholy at the current dating scene. Yeah, you'll get over it. I mean, well, I shouldn't say. I'm not trying to be, but I'm just saying things take time. It's a process. Like back in my day, and I just generally think young people are less horny, which is good and bad. But back in my day, I mean, I grew up and the time where there were those teen movies where there was like American Pie and these other and Undressed on MTV, where it was very normal to be young and be horny, and we were. And in undergrad, the girls would sit in a basement of one of the dorms and talk about all the sex we weren't having. I don't think y'all do that, probably. Y'all probably don't do that. As someone who is on social media a lot, I don't think we are less horny, but women see how men discuss engaging with us online and it's not worth it. And that's fair. Totally fair. I think young people have too much existential dread to be horny. Also fair. Young people being less horny, I think it's good, but it seems like they also have a disinterest in relationships and socialization, which is more of the problem. I don't think young people being less horny is good. I don't. I don't. I was horny. I don't. Now that we have expanded access, well, I forgot. Okay. Well, we're in a post-Roe world, so it's different. It's different. So maybe it is good. I'm sorry. This is what I'm saying. Like, I feel really bad for y'all because it's just like the costs and the consequences are so high. So high. But anyways, um I don't think that it's a universally good thing that young people are less horny, because I think that means something is not going right. I think we should question why the behavior of young adults and teenagers was similar for this a huge span of modern history, and then all of a sudden it changed. And so we really need to figure out why it changed. Biology, culture, sociology, a mixture of all three. But if it's changed because there's something biological, things that are misfiring, then that is a concern, because that doesn't just impact your desire to have sex. It impacts so many things, like you mentioned, relationships and sociality. I actually think it is important to have some kind of, I'm sorry, girls. I love a homosocial space. I'm a girl's girl, a woman's woman, loved a girls group, a women's group. Okay. But I do think that because we have to live on the planet with men of all ages and young men, that some level of socialization with young men is still important between the genders. And I think girls are so gender segregated, and that is not bad. Not totally bad at all. But there's just not downtime to just like casually interact with boys. I'm trying to think of my nieces. It's, girls' sports. I mean, you go to school, but y'all don't go to church no more, so y'all don't go to youth group. Yeah, but it is what it is. We're just gonna have to figure out how to adapt. Anyways, I said 2 hours. We are exactly at 2 hours. Is there a study or survey saying people are less horny? There is, but I would have to go through my catalog of everything I've ever read. And I said I was going to wrap this up at 2 hours, but I will make a note and come back and we can talk about the data that says that people are less horny. I think phones also cut off the way things naturally develop. Like foreplay doesn't start with foreplay, it starts with developing an actual connection, and that energy just cuts off. Yeah. A lot of young people have been dealing with COVID lockdown where they can't meet each other. Oh, COVID. Oh my God. COVID fucked, ruined the world. Another reason why I just feel deep sadness for children. If you're under the age of 21, I feel so much sadness for you. COVID ruined your world. You deserved a better world. These people really fucked it up. Fucked up the most important, most formative parts of your life. I don't know why the kids don't riot. Why are y'all not setting stuff on fire? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye. Shout out to y'all. Bye.